And we're going to get into a lesson that continues the study that we've been doing the last couple of weeks under the broader category of communication, right? So one of the things that we wanted to look at is how can we communicate well with others, especially as we go into an interesting season as we have Camp for Kids coming up, and there's going to be a lot of evangelistic opportunities. So we want to just take a little bit of time to say, hey, can we do something? Can we do anything to help us communicate better? Over the last couple of weeks, we've looked at the importance of asking questions. I trust that some of you may have learned a thing or two about asking questions. Last week, we looked at the idea of the permission principle and the law of anticipation. Now, allow me to just share this rather explicitly. The lessons that we're doing right now are intended to be quite practical. Okay. We're going to look at some illustrations from scriptures, but I want you to have a bit of a lower expectation that there's going to be some dramatic spiritual truth that is revealed to you over the course that there's a spider here, Trace. Maybe. You see it? Anybody want it? You want it, Linda? Oh, you don't want it? All right. All right. He's gone. He's gone. So anyway, we'll see if I walk through a spider web up here today. Again, so we're going through some very practical lessons, and the idea is that these are something that you can use every day. Don't plan on coming out of here with, oh my goodness, I never knew that about the Bible, right? That's not where it is. So I want you to have low expectations on sort of spiritual revelation. I want you to have higher expectation on you're going to leave here with something that you can actually do to be able to better communicate with other people. So that's what we're looking at over the next couple of weeks leading into Camp for Kids, because we want to be equipped with the practical tools so that we would be able to share the love of Jesus with other people. Right? It's one thing to know it; it's another thing to share it. So that's where we are today. Now there are many laws that govern effective communication. But the law that we're going to look at today may very well be the most important law when it comes to communicating. Because if we're not effective at doing this, our message may very well fall on deaf ears. So I want to sort of set that expectation with you. After class last week, I was having a conversation with someone who was here with us. And I'm not going to call them out by name, but during the conversation, we talked about the parable of the sower. And just given what we have to go through, I put it on the board. Well, maybe I should do it this way. The parable of the sower you can find in Matthew chapter 13, verses 1 through 9. I'm going to just tell you the story here in the interest of time to get started, but it talks about how one day the farmer goes out to sow his seed, and he throws his seed, and some of it falls on fertile soil and grows, and others falls on shallow soil and grows for a bit, and still other just falls on the rocks and is eaten by birds, and that was the parable of the sower. But in this conversation, we just talked about how, what the farmer knows is that you have to cultivate the soil. You have to prepare the soil to accept the seed. And that's very much what we want to do. That's when we were talking about the law of anticipation. What the law of anticipation was all about was cultivating the soil, was cultivating the person that you're talking to, so that they want to say, yes, I want to hear more about that. Right? That's what we talked about last week. So as we get into today, I'm curious, has anybody ever found themselves involved in a conversation that was just absolutely terrible? You were in agony being in that conversation. Right? I mean, we've all been there, right? We've all been that. Perhaps you have a neighbor that comes over. And the neighbor comes over and they have pictures from a recent vacation, and each picture has a wonderful story that they think is just hilarious and you just struggle. You just struggle to pay attention. Like this vacation went on 10 days too long, right? Um, as I was preparing, I thought of this story. Trace, I don't remember if we were married yet, but before we had kids, holidays were quite hectic for us because we had a number of commitments. We'd have to be in a number of different places. And when I was working, it was actually bad because a holiday wasn't a day that I got to rest. A holiday was a day that I had to run more, and I was actually worse off after a holiday than I was going into a holiday. And on this was a Thanksgiving. And what we would do is we would go across the field to my grandmother's house or my aunt's house for Thanksgiving dinner around lunchtime. And then we would have to go to the other side of Warren for Thanksgiving dinner with Trace's family. And I remember this particular instance. We had gone to Warren, and I had been working a lot, and I looked like I had been working a lot. And as we walked in the front door, and I'm going to say this as Trace's aunt. I know it's not her aunt. I know she's not Trace's aunt, but I also don't understand just all the family tree dynamics that Trace's side of the family employs. I have brothers. I have a brother, but otherwise it's just cousins and aunts and uncles. Like I don't get into the second and removing and all that stuff. I don't get it. But we go in, and so Trace's aunt, I can hear Trace's aunt from another room. You remember this? You know exactly where I'm going. We go, and what you could hear is, "Oh, I'm so sick. I'm so sick, and I had to get up this morning to put this turkey in." And it was just carrying on and on and on about, like what a martyr she should be for preparing this feast when she feels so bad. And then I walk around the corner, and she's about 4 feet tall. She ain't very tall. She ain't very tall. I walk around the corner, and she goes, "You look how I feel." Well, it's nice to see you too, right? It's just it was you look how I mean, what do you say in that situation? I didn't know. I want to just get in the car and go home. But I tell you that story because we've all been in a situation where the other person talks only about themselves, have we not? We've all been there. And those situations where people go on and on and on, and maybe they only take a breath to give you the opportunity to talk about how wonderful they are, right? Have you ever been in one of those situations? Now I need to take a drink right now. So while I take a drink, why don't you just continue the conversation and tell me how wonderful I am, right? Maybe you've been in one of those. Now, we have a special name for people who talk about themselves. People who talk about themselves. We call these people boring. That's not a biblical term. Maybe it is. I didn't do that actual study in preparation. But we know that. We have some people that what they do, they talk about themselves, talking about themselves all the time. Now, we also know there's another group of people. There's a group of people who maybe talk about others. And then in parentheses, when they're not around. Right? We know there's a group of people out there like this as well. I'm sorry? Well, yeah, they're interesting people, aren't they? Right? But these are the type of people that we call gossipers, right? I don't even know if that's the right word, but that's the best I know how to conjugate it. But then there's a third group of people, and there's people who talk about you to you. And you know what? We like these people. We like these people. There's a reasonably famous story ahead of the 1874 election in the United Kingdom. The British or the whatever, the prime minister was up for election, and it was between a guy by the name of Benjamin Disraeli and William Gladstone. There were two. There were dinners. There's a dinner situation, and on two consecutive nights, Jenny Jerome, who would be the mother of Winston Churchill, had the opportunity to sit down to dinner with each of these two candidates. A journalist would ask her what was her impression of the two men. Her response: "When I left the dining room after sitting next to Gladstone, I thought he was the cleverest man in England. But when I sat next to Disraeli, I left feeling that I was the cleverest woman." And I thought, isn't that an interesting story? We have boring people, we have gossips, and we have people who focus the conversation on the person or the people right in front of them. And the thing is the people that focus on the people right in front of them, we love them, right? They get us. Have you ever had a conversation like that? Have you ever really been in one of those conversations where that person was so focused on you that as you're going through the conversation, you feel the need to just say, yes, yes, you get me, right? That's it, exactly. You may say right on. Like it's like they're reading your mail, right? You just make that, the other person really got you. And that's what points us to our law for today. Today, we are going to look at something called the law of connecting. If we want to communicate effectively with people, we need to be connecting with them all the time. And this is quite possibly the most important law around communication. And this law states that communicators know it's all about others. If you want to communicate effectively with people, individually, as a group, large, small, whatever it is, keep in mind it's all about them. It's all about them. And you know what? Jesus got this. We're going to look at a couple of examples here today. John chapter 4 is the story of the woman at the well. Story starts out and says Jesus had to go through Samaria. Now, if you've been a student of the Bible for some amount of time, you may get the understanding that generally speaking, Jews did not go through Samaria. The story says that Jesus had to go through Samaria. And he goes through there and he stops and he meets the woman at the well. And they have this whole conversation, right? Now, if you look, Jesus starts by connecting with the woman. And he says, "Do you mind getting me a drink? I'm a little thirsty. Can you help me out?" And then he listened and he revealed himself in a way that resonated with her story. And when it's all said and done, verses 28, 29, and 30, I want to draw your attention here. It says, "Then leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people, 'Come see a man who told me everything I ever did.'" Who was Jesus talking about? He was talking about her. He was talking about the woman right in front of her. She was like, "Oh, wow." She'd go tell other people. This guy knows all about me. It wraps up. Could this be the Messiah? And then they came out to the town and came out of the town and made their way towards him. You know, every week we start class by reviewing core values. And the first thing we write on the board every week is that Jesus values people. It was all about others. It's all about others. And that makes obvious sense, does it not? It's been a couple of years. If you go back, it wasn't last year, maybe the year before. I probably did close to 6 months on just different communication principles. But one of them was something that we called the big picture principle. And the big picture principle says that the entire world, with one tiny exception, is made up of other people. Think about that. The entire world is made up of you and everybody else. That's how it goes. Every person you meet is another other person on planet Earth. And so I think that's an interesting perspective for us to keep in mind. Now, I would ask you this: why do you think God made so many other people? Why do you think He made so many? And I'm going to suggest to you that perhaps it was for us to notice and to serve them, to help them out, right? Now, we've also noted before in this room about how everybody on planet Earth has the same favorite name, and it's their own, right? You can be in a room, people be shouting out all sorts of names. You don't pay attention. You hear your name, you perk up. Everybody has the same favorite name. And you know what? God understands this. If you want to turn with me to Exodus chapter 33, Exodus 33, verse 17, God and Moses are having a conversation, and it says, "And the Lord said to Moses, I will do the very thing you have asked because I am pleased with you, and," you may want to underline this, "I know your name." I know your name. God tells Moses he knows this principle. So we're presented with this gift of a world full of other people who are largely focused on themselves, right? And you may like that, you may not like that. You may say, well, that's right. You may say that's not right. You may have some opinion on that, and that's fine. But I would say if you at least have an understanding of that's the way the world is set up, should you not use that to your advantage? Should we not take a moment to observe that and say, maybe there's something I can use to my advantage here? Because after all, communication is all about others. It's about informing, it's about transforming people to become and to advance to be in a better future. Now, we're all aware of the need for communication, but I think we're probably all equally aware as to how difficult it is, right? Has something ever happened that you felt uninformed about? You ever found Dan's shaking his head. Yeah, have you ever found you didn't know what was going on, right? I want to talk to the wives here. Have you ever told your husband something only to later have a conversation about how your husband did not remember that earlier conversation? I'm not going to make eye contact.
You think they
Well, you just wait. You're going to like this one, Josh. You're going to like this one, Josh. Husbands, have you ever been convinced that your wife never told you about something that she insists she told you about, possibly several times? Has that ever happened to you? Last night. So, stand over here by Linda. Tim, I might need your protection. No. So Uh, something that we have learned to do is, and we're very much in the early part of this, is we are buying ground beef, and then and this is we in the trace sense of the word. So this I get pronouns confused from time to time. I buy the ground beef, Trace takes it, she makes it into hamburger patties, and we freeze it that way. That way, when it comes time for dinner, you can just go grab however many that you need. So I bought, I forget, 15 pounds of ground beef or something this past week. And I said, hey, don't forget to make patties out of that, whatever. She says, yeah, I'll do it. So she was doing that last night. She was out there and she's making hamburger patties, and she's doing all the packaging that she does with it. And then she's getting ready to go to bed. And she comes out in the dining room and she says to me, and you please correct me on this, I'm going to remind you to take the hamburgers to the freezer. She had made the hamburgers. They'd all been packaged up. They were sitting on the counter in the kitchen. I needed to take them downstairs to the freezer. But she comes into the kitchen and she says to me, I'm going to remind you to take the hamburgers to the freezer. You need to know that she has not told me this before. She hadn't told me the first time. I hadn't been minded so that I could be reminded. Like, you have to understand how some of these words work, right? She said, I'm going to remind you. Like, I didn't know, now I'm not surprised. Like, I wasn't surprised that like this would be my responsibility. I didn't know it was there, right? So that's where it was. But I share that, Josh, because there are times where I'm reminding you to do something that I hadn't been minded of in the first place. And last night I had primary evidence of that. So I had to write it down. I mean, it's just the timing was perfect. Thank you. I mean, we just got to get that in. But have you ever been involved in a conversation where the message didn't stick? I think we probably all have, haven't we? Why do you think it didn't stick? Do you think it was because the information wasn't correct? I'm I'm going to suggest to you today that perhaps the message didn't stick because there was not a connection between the two people. But there was connecting that was not happening. And I don't know about you, but I have found myself in situations where I absolutely knew I was not making a connection. Like, I can tell I'm trying to go this direction, somebody else is going in a completely different direction. Like, I've been in those situations. I've been in those situations. Sometimes they're accentuated because I have an accent, or so I'm told. Or the person on the other side has an accent, and I'm having a hard time understanding what they're saying to me, right? There's some of these things that can happen. But you're fairly certain that while words are coming out of your mouth, you know that they're not resonating. I'll remind you, I coached elementary basketball this past season. There were words that came out of my mouth, and then there's whatever that happened, right? It did not resemble basketball most of the time. Some time ago, we're studying communication laws right now, but we studied leadership laws. And you may recall that there was a leadership law called the law of connection. And the law of connection said that there is the need to connect with people in order to lead people. But the communication law is a sort of a nuanced variation of that. The communication law says that connecting tells us that connecting is an ongoing and enduring process. You don't connect once and then it just happens. You got to keep it going. You got to keep it going. Far too often, we put an emphasis on the content that we wish to share. That there's something important that we need to get. And we think if the message that we have to share is just important enough, people are automatically going to pick up on that. That they're just naturally going to pay attention, they're going to internalize it, they're going to remember it. And the fact of the matter is that is not true, and it's not true by a long shot. How many of us have bad habits? I'll go first. I got some bad habits. I do. Some of my bad habits go way back. Some of you may, I think some of you in here had my dad as a sixth grade teacher. My dad taught sixth grade for 35, 36 years, however long it was. And whenever I was in elementary school, I would ride to work with my dad, and I would come home from work, or I'd come home from school with my dad. I'd just stay after school, right? And something that my dad would do after school is he would go into the teacher's lounge and he would get me a bottle of Coke, back when we had glass bottles, those old timers in here that remember the glass bottles, right? You know, he would come out and he would give me a Coke. And there were several teachers that would harass me saying, oh, you know, you're drinking poison. Oh, you know, you're going to rot your teeth. Like, there was all these things. And the fact of the matter is that may be true. That may be true. It wasn't that the information was necessarily bad or wrong or whatever. You know what it was? There was not a connection. There was not a connection that was happening. The content, the message that you have can be 100% correct, but if there is no connection, it may not stick. Going back to our lesson from a couple of weeks ago about asking questions, you know, it doesn't matter if you know all the answers, right? Because there's a big part of what you share that people just aren't going to naturally remember. And I'm going to suggest to you that maybe you don't even have to have a good message to be able to connect with people and to make a difference. What we absolutely need is we need to be connecting with people if you want to be able to influence them. I do not have firsthand experience with this, but it is my understanding that one of the things that Mormons do when they go out to evangelize is they offer this invitation, and it's something like this. They say, wouldn't you like to be with your family and loved ones when you die? That's pretty powerful connection. Pretty large assumption. They haven't met my family. You know, I mean, I mean, some of us, you know, you may say, well, you may want to rethink that one, right? You know, I think that's why they put the friends in there as well. Well, you know, when you die, wouldn't you like to be with your friends and family? And they say, yes. There's a connection that happens. So the question I have for you today is, how do you connect? How do you connect with others? I've managed to completely mess up my notes. They're all out of order. I think I've done something here. How do you connect? I have 5 things I want to share with you on how to connect. Now, the first 3 involve how do you put the attention on the other person? Like how do you make them feel important? Remember, everybody has the same favorite subject or same favorite name. Like how do we get that put the spotlight on them? Those are the first 3. The first one is to remember that you are not the main attraction. If you go into conversations with the intent of making it about them, you are light years ahead. You are light years ahead. You are not the main event, right? Not even close. You need to get over yourself. When we started studying Proverbs several weeks ago, I guess earlier this year, when we started studying Proverbs, I made a statement, something to the effect of, we are at most 2 steps from stupid, right? Most of us spend the majority of our life 1 step from stupid. Like I'm pretty close. Some of you may be feeling a little good about yourself and may say, hey, Jess, I'm reasonably sure I'm 3. Anybody here that's 3 steps away from stupid? I didn't think so. That's where we all are. We got to get over ourselves. Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4, the Apostle Paul tells us, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking for your own interests, but each of you to the interest of the others. You're not the main attraction, they are. Number 2, make a good impression. I'm going to state this a different way. Don't be weird. It's biblical. Don't be weird. Some people out there are naturally weird. You know this. You don't have to make eye contact with nobody, be nudging each other. That's not the time to be doing it now, right? But like don't be weird, right? Just make a good first impression. The weird can come later, right? You know, when somebody told me that if you have friends and you don't think that they're weird, then you just don't know them well enough, right? You know, so weird can come later, but weird up front, that prevents connection. Don't be weird. Number 3, be intentional to understand their world. What's the world like for them, especially with lost people? Lost people may have some very interesting experiences that you need to be aware of. And this is where the questions that we've talked about the last few weeks come in, right? If we can ask good questions, we can get a better understanding of their world. We can learn where they've come from, where they are, and then we can potentially figure out ways that we can help them move to a better place. Proverbs chapter 20, verse 5 reads, the purposes of let me read this again in English. The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out. This is where asking questions is so, so important. Be interested in people. So this puts the spotlight on other people. Now the other 2 we're going to talk about are going to be to improve yourself. Number 4 is be personable. Now, I will tell you that I did not get the best advice on this. Some of the best advice well, I shouldn't say the best. Some of the more common advice I got on this came from my Uncle Greg. Now, my Uncle Greg very much enjoyed making people feel awkward. That was what he liked to do. He would tell me that, you know, when you're in the school, what you do is you stand with your back against the wall. And if you ever find pictures of my Uncle Greg, you'll find that he often would take pictures on his tiptoes just to look a little taller than people. But he would go back against the wall. He'd say, go back against the wall, cross your arms, just look out and nod. Like that's what you do to make students feel awkward, I guess, right? Like, and the thing is I didn't have any better counsel, so like those are things that I did. That became the natural thing to do, is to stand back towards the wall, cross my arms. Now, as an aside, whenever I pump gas, I typically stand on the curb that the pump is on just so I can be whatever that is, 4 or 6 inches taller. I do like that. That's sort of fun. Because, people that come through the intersection, they're like, whoa, wait a second, that's a tall guy. But, you know, hmm? You got to be personable. You need to be approachable. You need to do whatever you can do to shrink the gap between where you are and the person on the other side. How can you make that distance shorter? That's a question. I had a conversation. My brother works for the bank, and he was supposed to go to a networking event. And I said, "Hey, are you looking forward to that networking event?" He's like, "Ugh, I hate these things." I said, "Well, what type of training did the bank give you to go to these networking events?" And he said, "Well, they didn't give me anything. They didn't give me any type of training." And I thought, well, no wonder you don't like this, right? And as it turns out, I'd actually just gone through a lesson that told me about like how can you be more comfortable in uncomfortable environments? What do you do if you're at a conference full of all sorts of people and you know none of them? And one of the first things I learned, and I said to my brother, I said, "Well, can I share something with you I just learned?" And he said, "Yeah, please do." I said, "When you go to these events, you have people who are uncomfortable and they're largely interested in promoting themselves. If you go to a networking event, they're there to tell you about this is the wonderful thing that I do, right?" So I suggest to him, I said, "Why don't you just try something like this? You go up to people, you say, 'Hi, my brother's name is Will,' but I said, hi, my name's Jess. I don't think we've met before." Has anybody ever done that to you? You do that with other people? Like it's an easy way to shrink that distance. Be personal. Hi, you know your name, right? I don't think we've met. Or you could say, I know we've met, but I'm having a hard time remembering your name. That's sort of the world I live in right now. It's like, I don't get enough repetitions, and I need to have some of that thing. So you just say, "Hey, what do you do? How do you make yourself be personable?" It's a super simple thing that can break the ice and can make you, much more personable. And the fifth thing is develop charisma. Now, I will tell you that charisma was something that I didn't really know much about. I still don't know a whole lot about it. I know that the kids these days are infatuated with it. But the way it was presented to me is that certain people just have it. They just have this charisma that everybody just likes them and whatever. But the fact of the matter is that this is something that we can actually learn to develop. And it comes from being present in the situation, being present with the person, right? You're there and you're not distracted by other things. Projecting confidence and creating a warm environment, right? If you can do those things, you will be developing your charisma. Now, I will ask you this. Do you think Jesus had charisma? I would suggest to you that absolutely Jesus had charisma. And we can and we should, as followers of Jesus, be looking to develop this as well. Maybe that's another lesson that we do at some time. I do want to invite you to turn with me to the Gospel of Luke, chapter 19. Luke 19, we're going to look at verses 1 through 10. This is the story of Zacchaeus the tax collector. Story goes, Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, "He is gone to be the guest of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." What can we learn from this story on this law of connecting? Jesus comes to town. There's a guy that wants to see him. Problem is, he can't. He's short. So he climbs up into a tree. Jesus is walking through. Jesus sees a man in the tree. This is a normal event, right? If you were walking down the road and there's somebody up in the tree, like, what would your reaction be? What was Jesus' reaction? Called him by name. Wow. Called him by name. And John doesn't record some elaborate message that Jesus shared with him. But what he does record is that Jesus called him by name, and at the end of the story, Zacchaeus is transformed. He's like, "I'm doing everything different now." Where did it go? Here and now, I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I've cheated anyone out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. That's a transformation. And the only clue that John gives us is that Jesus connected with him. I think there's something here that we all need to recognize and to be encouraged with. You don't have to be a Bible scholar to be able to connect with people. And I'm going to suggest to you that connecting may make all the difference in somebody's life. As we wrap up today, may we all be more mindful of the importance of connecting with others. Not just one time, but an ongoing connection that strengthens relationships and leads to transformation. Now, I'm curious, has anybody here ever struggled with connecting with someone before? All right. Yeah. I think we all have. So as you leave here today, I want to encourage you to take a look at these, and maybe you have 5 other items, but I want to encourage you to think about that. Is there something on this board that I could do? Maybe I could do it more consistently. Maybe I could start doing it. Is there something I can do that maybe, just maybe, will help me connect more effectively with others? And to that end, as I typically wrap up, I write the letters ACT on the board. Based on what you've learned today, what action will you take? What change will you make? And is there something that you learned today that you could teach to somebody else for your benefit and for theirs? So that's what I have prepared for you today.